Now here are a few coriander plants that I've got that I deliberately allowed to go to bolt. Now this means that the plants now are in flower, and in time they're going to produce seeds just at the back of these flower heads. What this will allow you to do is keep seeds that you can then plant for future years. If I just zoom in the early stages, the coriander leaves are more like the leaves that you're familiar with. But once the plant starts to bolt, the leaves actually change. It doesn't look too dissimilar to carrot leaves, and in fact I think coriander is a member of the carrot family anyway. So if you do have any plants that have gone to bolt, allow them to go through and produce seeds, and you'll have your own seeds that you can plant next year. On a much earlier video about sowing broad beans, I said I was going to sow a catch crop of radishes in between. The idea was that the broad beans will still be growing and the space is maximised, and a catch crop such as radishes are ideal because they develop within about a month. And you can see that some of these radishes are ready to be harvested. So that's raised bed gardening in small spaces. And the larger raised bed has been planted up with lettuce, interspersed with mustard greens and onions. The plants at the back are red currant and black currant. And the third raised bed is loaded with coriander, and just in between the red onions that I sowed quite a few weeks ago. It's just starting to thicken up. And it's ideal to have salads and spring onions near the kitchen, because you can just use them when you need it. Now then, I've got 3 compost bins, but this is taking it to another level. I've got a compost envy here. What are you doing over here, Ray, with your compost bins or your compost compartments?
Just turning it over so it rot down again, get some air into it. It's been there for a year. Just put into the next one. We can put some courgettes on top of there. Is
this number 1?
That'll be whichever number you call it.
Yeah, number 1 as in your oldest material.
That's the oldest one.
Yeah. Number 2.
That's not so old.
Yeah, and then this one is where you're going to do what?
I'll put some of the plants in there as well then.
Right.
The new stuff's going to go in there when this one's empty.
Okay, so you mainly use...
building it up.
So you're mainly using these 2 as your compost piles.
Yeah.
Should
be a bit more rotted.
I know what kind of material you put in there, but just for the purpose of informing the audience, tell us what kind of organic material you've been putting into your compost.
Grass cuttings, prunings, stuff for the beans last year.
I can see eggshells. You even put paper and
Shredded
cardboard
paper.
in, don't you?
Shredded paper, yeah.
And the reason for putting in a balance of wet material like your kitchen waste as well as cardboard and twigs is that you need that balance so that it doesn't get too wet, and it's the perfect sort of condition for compost making, isn't it?
Should be. It's a bit wet at the bottom on this. It's not been. It should have been turned over a while ago, but it didn't get turned over.
Yeah.
So it'll be alright next year. We'll use that in the greenhouse next year. Put my tomatoes in that, and after that, it'll go on out on the fruit bushes or in the beds.
Okay. So that's compost.
Yeah.
Compost making. Oh, that's good stuff there.
It's a bit wet, even though it's been covered.
If you just turn that over and just spread it a
cows.
bit, in this weather that we've had, it should help it along, shouldn't it?
Yeah, it's right in the middle there.
But it's good fertile material there for the garden.
Oh yeah. It went straight on, it's not been mixed since it went on, so you even get roots of runner beans on there coming up.
One thing I have noticed is David on the other plot, he'll put courgettes directly onto his compost. I've never done that. It obviously works because he's got some fantastic courgettes out of that. Do you do that?
That's what we're going to do on that one, on the right, yeah.
On number one, as we've decided to call it.
Yep, that's what I'm going to put on there. Did last year, it did alright.
You won't get tiddlers then, will you, with your courgettes?
Nope.
If they get too big, you know, give me a ring, don't you? Give me a call.
Big, the marrows.
Yeah, well, I like marrows. And you're quite keen for me to see how your tomato greenhouse is looking. Have you grown any beefsteak this year?
I think there's one there somewhere. You have to look at the labels to find that.
Oh, and you have got some sweet peppers. You don't do chili peppers like me, do you?
No, it's just too hot.
Are you sure I can't convert you to chili peppers one of these days?
Definitely.
What about something mild like a Hungarian hot wax just to get you started?
No chance.
You're not interested in a hot wax then?
None of them. Too hot. Any of them's just too hot. Just blow my head off.
But you do really well with your tomatoes anyway.
Well, this is from the compost heap, and the tomato seeds are growing in the bed.
Well, this is nice because you can just see a little tomato forming there.
Oh, yeah.
Golden Crown, a yellow variety.
Yeah, like
That's what the label
cherry.
says.
What a cherry one they are, the small ones.
You know, I've been growing tomatoes for a good 10 years now, and every year I always like seeing the first leaves and the first flowers. Just hang on, you're
There's only a couple I missed.
pinching out, aren't you? So let's show the viewers what that means.
A couple of missed.
There's a tiny one here, if I can take liberty. So you just pull those little side shoots out, and that's called pinching out. And you do that to encourage the plant to grow upwards in a sort of cordon fashion. It's always good to come and do a return visit on Ray's mighty Bramley, as I've decided to call it. We've got a bit of action, haven't we? There's some apples, baby apples forming there.
It's promising so far.
Yeah.
It's how many fall off in a June drop.
And that's the annual drop that you expect nature to just sort of thin itself, and some of the apples will fall. It's interesting that whilst we've got some apples forming, there's some bloom still there.
Yeah, it does sometimes. Usually all flower at once, we get the odd late one. But a lot of these, don't thin them out yet, just leave them. Because the nature will do it in a bit. You think you got plenty there, and you suddenly get all of them falling off and you end up with nothing.
Yeah. Well, I'm very reluctant in thinning out apples and pears. I always think that, you know, the tree will decide how much it wants to hold on to. But I know more experienced growers like yourself do help that process along by picking the apples off And what would you do in a bunch like, say, over here? What would you be doing if they weren't falling after the June drop?
Take up at least 2 off, so not too crowded. They grow a bit better then.
Yeah.
If you leave too many on, you get little apples. You got misshapes.
Yeah.
And then you just fall off anyway. So not really worth having. It's a lot better getting 1 big apple than 3 little ones. There's a lot less peeling.
Now I'm in one of my friend's polytunnel. What Chris has done here is he's put his strawberries directly in the beds within the polytunnel, and as I mentioned in an earlier episode on how to grow strawberries, by putting strawberries inside a greenhouse, or in this case a polytunnel, what you're doing is encouraging it to develop fruit a little bit earlier. Now he did offer me to taste one of these, but with it being Ramadan, I'm myself fasting, I've had to decline. But I'm sure they are tremendous. I'll take his word for it at this point. Now he's got a cucumber growing there at the back. And the area that I'm most interested in, and the reason why I've popped up to this particular plot, is these peppers. California Wonder. For any of you who've never grown peppers, this is the go-to sweet pepper or bell pepper. It's the only sweet pepper that I've grown. It is delicious. What you can see here is Chris has just put his tomatoes directly into the bed. It just means that you won't need to water it as much, and the roots can go further into the soil. And up here is the chili seedlings that he's got. There's a variety, you can just about read it, called sweet chocolate pepper and Hungarian hot wax. Now I happen to know that it was after a conversation that Chris and I had about a variety of pepper, chili pepper that I was growing called Hungarian hot wax, and he's decided to have a go at that. And clearly here there's sweet, no, it's not sweet pea, I think it's just peas in a gutter, bit of guttering. And there's companion planting going here. Marigolds planted amongst tomatoes. It's an absolutely superb idea, this. And what it will do is, not only does it add colour to your vegetable plot, but it encourages wildlife. And this last bit here is courgette, and it's a yellow variety. And these will be ready for picking in a few days, I'm sure.